First Florida man. Ando de Soto. First Florida man. First Florida man was Hernando de Soto. Won't you so loco? Show off your photos. Throw out your Twinkies. Throw up your ho-hos. Tuck in them pinkies. Them shits a no-no. The first Florida man was Hernando de Soto. Brought to my attention by the man with the mojo. My 8th subscriber, I'm a fat go-so. Jump in them sinkies and dump them mimosos. The first Florida man was Hernando de Soto. First Florida man was Hernando de Soto. First Florida man was Hernando de Soto.
Hello, everybody. I assume nobody's going to be here because it's 3:00 on a Saturday, but I wanted to put this episode out because I had it already researched, and Dave and I are going to see this movie tonight, and I don't want the Hollywood version of it to influence my brain from the true crime version of it, like the real life version of it. So we are going to be talking about today Jeffrey Manchester, the Roofman. Now, some of you may know that a movie came out yesterday. I think it opened yesterday about this incident. Let's get some background music going. And like I said, I covered this story before. However, it was when I very first started. So I didn't necessarily know what I was doing. I didn't know where all the buttons were. I was not good. I sucked. I was told when I first started streaming that I was going to suck for at least a year. And that was true. I did. If you go back and watch those early episodes, it's pretty bad. What is this background music that Restream is giving me? I don't like any of it. What's this one? Let's find some good background music before we get into it. This is better. Something a little chill. Better. We'll stick with this until it gets bad. Anywho, let's jump into Jeffrey Manchester, the Roofman. Have you guys seen the preview? I played it on my channel before, and I don't know, whoever made the movie copyright claimed my whole thing, which is weird because a trailer to a movie is an advertisement for a movie. So essentially I was advertising your movie for free, and you decided to take the 32 cents I make in ad revenue, but that's fine. Whatever. Like, what are you going to do? So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to play the preview for the movie again. However, I am going to see the movie, and I hear it's very good. I looked at some reviews of it earlier today, and everybody who has seen it has really liked it, mainly because it's a really good story, which I identified 2 years ago when I first covered this story is like, oh, that's a very good story. I want to talk about that. Apparently, the creator of this film also thought the same thing when he heard the story of Jeffrey Manchester. It's so weird to be just by myself streaming. I've streamed with my co-host for like a year now, and I feel weird not have somebody to, like, you know, I feel weird having to talk the whole time. Anyway, so Jeffrey Allen Manchester. He's an American convicted spree robber. He was formerly in the United States Army Reserve. And he was also known as the rooftop robber, or simply Roofman, due to his modus operandi of entering his targets, most commonly McDonald's, but he also did some Blockbuster Video. You know, this is back in the day. Some Burger Kings, a couple of grocery stores I think he hit, allegedly. This is all allegedly. He only got convicted for 2. But he would drop down from the ceiling. He would drill a hole in the roof and drop down. That's how he got his name, the Roofman. He graduated from Cordova High School in Rancho Cordova, California. He was a middle-class suburban California kid, and he joined the Army right after high school. He did some special ops training. He was stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina for a while. There was some op in South America that the military will not talk about, but it got him demoted somehow. So something went wrong in the South American operation, and he was sent from active duty back to the reserves. I'm not sure how all of this works, but that's what apparently happened. Let's get this going. Geez, maybe I am still bad at this. There we go. Got some B-roll of McDonald's from the 90s to play for you guys. So the robberies. In November of 1998, Manchester's 18-month-long crime spree begins. And he's known for, like I said, dropping into fast food restaurants from the roof, startling the employees by just dropping down on them. And gathering them all up, getting the money from the safe, getting the manager to get the money from the safe. And he would, there we go. He would end up getting them all inside of the walk-in freezer. And then he would get away from the location and then call the police to let them out of the restaurant or out of the freezer. So like I was saying, in addition to McDonald's, he's mostly known for McDonald's because there was a number of them. He would study their schedules. McDonald's runs like clockwork. They have a system. They do everything all across the country the same every time. They have a system. They have a schedule. They don't deviate from that hardly at all. That's the whole point of McDonald's. It's going to be the same whether you get your Big Mac here in the United States or anywhere over the world. And it's because they have very strict guidelines of what to do and how to do it. And he learned their schedule and he figured it out. And he would either rob them either first thing in the morning when they were just opening up or right as they were closing. He did make a couple of mistakes along the way during his 18 months. One of the robberies that he did was in Folsom, California. It didn't go quite as planned because he was up on the roof, waiting all night, cut the hole. He dropped down, realized it was Thanksgiving Day that day. McDonald's was closed on Thanksgiving, so he ended up breaking into a McDonald's that was closed. Of course, the managers were the only ones that were able to get into the safes. If there's no manager there, he can't get into the safe. So he basically ruined their roof for no apparent reason. There was a couple of other locations where they found tool marks on the roof, like he started to break in, but ended up not for whatever reason. Either he was startled away or, something happened. Maybe a cop car passed by and he cut his losses, didn't rob them. But they found a bunch of locations hey, the roof's leaking. What's happening up there? The roofers would go up there and be like, looks like somebody was trying to drill a hole in your roof. Once the police were called, well, he was still up on the roof at this one in Colorado, I believe it was. He was still up on the roof. The police are called. They come up with their lights on. He sees it, jumps off the back. An officer sees him do that, and he bounds over a 6-foot-tall chain link fence, runs into the woods, ends up escaping. And the cop that was interviewed was actually giving him props. All of these police that were chasing him, a lot of these statements in the news footage and stuff was he was very smart and he's very good at getting away and things like that. I think it's funny that they almost as if they weren't trying to catch. Even McDonald's at first wasn't that worried about it because they have worked into their budget. Yeah, we're going to do everything the exact same way, but we might get robbed a few times, but we have that worked into the numbers. It wasn't till after the 40th one, they believe he did around 45, that McDonald's started offering a $10,000 reward to catch him. He ended up going around to 9 different states. Let's see, here's a map. So these are all the states that he ended up that they believe he did robberies in. Like I said, he was only convicted for 2. So All of this is alleged up until we get to North Carolina. But it was all up and down the West Coast. He was stationed there, he lived there, and it turns out all of these other states that he was at, they found out later after they caught him and figured out who he was, that he had either training or something with the station there for however long with the Army Reserves or whatever training. That's where they sent him. And these robberies would start right when he got there and stop right when he left. So now this is important. So it's 9 different states, but they ended up piecing it together because not only was the way he was entering these restaurants mostly the same. There was a couple where he drilled in through a wall instead of through the ceiling, but for the most part, that part was the same. But when they interviewed the employees of these fast food restaurants or grocery stores or video stores, whatever he was robbing at the time, the one thing that everybody said was he was super nice to them. He was very polite. He would get their attention by firing like a warning shot into the wall if he had to. Sometimes he didn't even have to do that. And then after that, he was like soft-spoken and kind. They even said like he would lock them in the freezer, but he would make sure they would get their coats first so they weren't cold in there while they waited. It was almost as if he definitely didn't want to hurt anybody, and he didn't realize that traumatizing them by having a gun pointed at them is hurting them. It's like that part didn't click in his head that this is hurting them. Getting robbed at gunpoint is definitely hurting them. One of the employees interviewed said one time one of the robberies, he joked around with them as he was shutting the freezer. Hey, at least you're going to have the rest of the day off, as he slammed them into the freezer. Like, come on, man. That doesn't help. Oh, not yet. Let's get back over here. This music is driving me nuts. We're doing it without music. Maybe I'll edit this and add in music later. I can't stand it in my ears. Sorry. All right, let's watch this retro news article or news story.
The Roofman has returned to rob again. Overnight, cutting his way into this McDonald's at the intersection of Madison and San Juan in Sacramento's north area.
An individual broke into that McDonald's and accosted 3 employees.
Within hours following the holdup, a repair crew already was at work on the roof of McDonald's, closing his entry. The fast food restaurant shut its main lobby, serving only drive-up customers.
He orders them at gunpoint to either enter a refrigerator or a storage area, in which he tells them to stay for a certain amount of time, and then he removes the cash and flees.
Roofman has struck Sacramento area businesses 8 times in the last 15 months. Many have been McDonald's like this one in Folsom last summer. But he's also robbed Burger King and other businesses. This was an earlier composite drawing of Roofman, always wearing a mask. The owner here refused comment on all details of the robbery, referring calls to the McDonald's Corporation. He did say he was relieved that his employees were safe. So far, no employee has ever been injured or wounded. There was no estimate of the amount of cash taken. The Roofman has struck in 7 other states, some 50 robberies, and there's a concern that some of these may be the work of copycats.
We don't know if we've got 1 person or 3 people or 5 people doing this, and it's becoming a little bit frustrating right now.
In Sacramento County, Mike Boyd, KCRA 3 reports.
They did say in that news story,
turn around,
that he didn't hurt anybody, and that doesn't stay that way for very long, because one of the robberies that he ends up doing, he pistol whips one of the employees. Now, he didn't just do that to do that like some criminals will do. He did that because one of the employees was going to be a hero and tried to hit him over the back of the head with a bucket, and it didn't really affect him that much, but he turned around and pistol whipped him. As far as I can tell, that is the only person that he ended up actually hurting And even then, that guy wasn't hurt that bad. Brutal Bob became a member. Thank you so much, Brutal Bob. We'll pass out some milk bones for that. The dogs will be very excited. Good to see you. Good to see you. There's Luke. There's Leia. There is Ava. And Xena. I forgot to tell you guys when I started. Yeah, the doggos are here. So if you want to support the show in any way, we will be passing out milk bones today. So once, when the McDonald's executive offered that $10,000 reward, one of the spokesmen said, hey, at least he's brand loyal, because at that time he had basically stopped robbing the Burger Kings and the Blockbusters, and he was specifically only doing McDonald's. So he started off doing a couple of different types of businesses. And I think because McDonald's was so structured in their schedule and he knew what it was going to be no matter where he was, he ended up strictly going with McDonald's. So he ends up getting caught. I guess it wouldn't be a show if he didn't, right? So, and on May 20th, 2000, in Belmont, North Carolina. Let's share that. He ends up getting caught because I think he got comfortable, but he ends up Okay, so he's in Belmont, North Carolina, and a few hours earlier, he had robbed a McDonald's in Gastonia, North Carolina, which, if you look at the map, is only 7 miles away. So the police are already on high alert. So he robs this one over here in Gastonia first, when they were closing. And then a few hours later for the morning shift, he robs this one over here in Belmont. Of course, once he robbed that first one, they knew, like the local police or the police all over the country at this time knew that there was this guy breaking in this specific way to specifically McDonald's. So they're on high alert watching all the other McDonald's in the area, knowing that this had happened the night before in Gastonia. And also he made another mistake. In Belmont, he did not latch the walk-in freezer as he normally did. He would lock people inside and then go a couple of miles away and call and say, hey, you have employees locked inside the freezer at this address, go get them. Like, he would call the police on himself, so that way those people wouldn't have to wait too long in the cold in the walk-in. He didn't latch it, so the employees ended up, as soon as he left, calling the police almost immediately. He was spotted by a patrol officer heading towards his getaway car parked in a church parking lot. And we can actually zoom in here. I'll show you. The church was like literally right across the street. So here's the McDonald's, and the church parking lot is right here. So this is where he parked to rob this McDonald's right here. And so they spotted him, and as soon as he was headed towards his car in the parking lot, as soon as they spotted him, he ran into the woods. And just a short while later, he was passing through a field where he got caught. And when he got caught, he didn't try to fight the cops. He didn't try to complain about the handcuffs being too tight or any of the other things we see on booze and body cams. He actually complimented the cops and said, hey, you guys did a good job today, as they were putting the cuffs on him. So on him, he had his rifle on him. He had pry tools on him. He had a drill with him. He had a hammer. He also had a nylon bag with the cash from both the robbery that he had just done right here and the one in Gastonia from the night before. So he had all the cash still on him as well.
He's known as Roofman, the robber who has hit 40 businesses across the country, mostly fast food restaurants such as McDonald's or Burger King. His method of operation is always the same. He cuts through roofs, then lowers himself into businesses early in the morning or late at night. Tonight, the lead profiler handling the case paints a picture of a person virtually anyone may know.
Very normal appearing person, athletic, young, healthy, not under the influence of drugs or alcohol, who's very polite.
Sharon Pagling Hagen says because Roofman is considerate of his victims, he most likely has a close relationship with his mother. And since he doesn't view himself as a robber, others probably don't either. So she's asking everyone to ask themselves a couple of questions.
Do you know of someone who you like very much who maybe has some unexplained income?
Or has anyone you know taken out-of-state trips when Roofman hit? In May of last year, he hit in Minnesota. From August to October, he hit in Maryland, Virginia, North and South Carolina. Then this past January, he struck in Massachusetts. Although Roofman has hit stores and restaurants across the country, more than half of the robberies have taken place in Northern California. In fact, investigators believe he either lives in Sacramento or has family living in the area. This composite sketch was put together through victim descriptions. However, those working the case say Roofman may have other distinguishing characteristics, and in the end, it will likely take a relative to turn him in. In
Turns
Sacramento,
out,
Gina Garcia.
did not take a relative to turn him in. He got caught himself. Just by making dumb mistakes. Why would you rob two in a row? Right, 7.5 miles, I think that map said, away from each other. So 2 in a row, and then also not latching that freezer door. What are you doing?
Finally got their man? Well, according to authorities in North Carolina, 28-year-old Jeffrey Allen Manchester, a Northern California native, may be the notorious rooftop robber. They believe Manchester could be responsible for nearly 40 robberies of fast food restaurants since November 1998, mostly McDonald's and Burger King. His specialty? Cutting a hole in the roof, forcing the employees to give him the money, then locking them in a freezer. Roofman has struck more than 20 times in California alone, starting in the Sacramento area in 1998. He's hit several nearby communities in Northern California, and he's robbed restaurants all along the East Coast as well. Manchester was arrested in Belmont, North Carolina, after 2 McDonald's restaurants were robbed Saturday morning. But how are authorities certain they actually have their man? Couldn't it be a copycat that was caught?
That at the very least, the physical description is very close.
Michael Van Winkle of the California Department of Justice says they're sending an agent to work with local law enforcement in North Carolina. They're pretty certain Manchester is the so-called Roofman.
If there weren't a lot of similarities and a lot of consistencies in this case, we wouldn't send a person across the country.
They've been trying to catch the Roofman for more than a year now. Police say because of his athleticism, it's been tough.
He escapes on foot, and people who have witnessed him running away say he's very fast, and he runs for quite a long distance before he gets in a vehicle, making it very difficult for anybody to identify what kind of vehicle he's even driving.
Yes, so police think they have their man. So what happens next is he ends up going to trial, and he denies any of the other robberies except for the 2 that he got caught for. He apparently got a lawyer immediately, which is the smart thing to do if you get arrested, and would not admit to any of the other ones, even though they went through, like I said before, all of his travels and how that with the Army and how it matched up with exactly where he was, the build and description and everything matched him. Now this is all circumstantial, and they didn't even try to get they didn't even try to extradite him to try him in these other states. They got him for those 2. The judge in that case basically threw the book at him, because normally for armed robbery you don't get as much time, although it was armed robbery, it was kidnapping, it was destruction of property, and a bunch of other like lower charges or whatever. But they gave him 45 years for the 2 McDonald's robberies, which I've seen prison sentences for less than that for murder, for premeditated murder, 20 to life, things like that. 45 years for robbing 2 McDonald's. So they sent him off to prison at the Browns Creek Correctional Center. What is this? I forgot what I had pulled up, but let's find out. Let's find out together what I had pulled up. Oh, I guess I'll read this article. This is from April 26th, 2000. He makes his trademark entry through the roofs of hamburger restaurants and other businesses, hacking out a hole with saws and drills, even an axe, and dropping in to surprise employees. Despite occasional pistol whipping or shots fired into the air, victims say the notorious rooftop robber remains a cordial character who suggests they don their jackets before he locks them up, shivering in a walk-in freezer. He later calls the cops to open the cooler. The masked athletic suspect, whom authorities have dubbed Roofman, has struck 38 times across 9 states from California to North Carolina. He has a penchant for Northern California, where 25 of his cat burglary-styled robberies have been staged. He's businesslike and focused and very serious about what he does, said Mike Van Winkle, a spokesman for the California Department of Justice. But many of those he's robbed have been struck by what a nice, decent guy he seems to be, a real gentleman. Since his crimes began in November of 1998, authorities say Roofman has robbed businesses in Nevada, Oregon, Minnesota, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, Massachusetts. In California, 9 robberies have occurred in Sacramento County, where he also hits restaurants in San Pedro, Castatic, and San Luis Obispo. He mostly targets McDonald's restaurants. The Roofman also robbed Burger King, Blockbuster, Toys R Us, Homebase, and several grocery stores. The thief last struck Sunday night in Clovis, just outside Fresno, taking about $2,000 from McDonald's and locking 4 young employees in a walk-in cooler, all the time wearing a smile. Police said $2,000 at a McDonald's. This is still when the dollar menu was around. That seems like a lot of money for a McDonald's. Maybe it's just me. For a guy holding a gun, he was pretty mellow, said Clovis Police Lieutenant Tim Boss. He wasn't excited in the least. McDonald's officials say they might have a real hamburglar on their hands. He likes us, one official said, who asked not to be named. He's very brand loyal, a loyal customer, and we work hard for that loyalty. They're still like joking around about it. Making off with about $100,000, the Roofman has found a robbery recipe that suits his surprise raid style, say authorities, who have offered a $10,000 reward for his arrest. It's human nature that you find something that works, you continue to do it, Van Winkle said. He knows that unlike banks, where you often encounter silent alarms, video cameras, and armed security guards, that's not often the case in a fast food place. His victims are usually teens, and he knows they aren't going to risk their lives over a few $1,000s and a job serving up hamburgers. Authorities said Roofman scouts his targets and then, usually under the cover of darkness, makes a 2-foot by 2-foot hole in the roof and surprises employees, ordering them to hand over the day's receipts and then corrals them into a freezer or back room, escaping on foot. Police describe him as 18 to 30 years old and between 5'7" and 6'3". That's a pretty wide spread. 5'7" to 6'3". Isn't that include just about every adult male? Almost. Maybe not. I mean, almost every adult male, not all of them, obviously. With an extremely athletic build, full lips, and a pronounced Adam's apple. He may work with an accomplice. Turns out he didn't. Roofman often jokes with his victims. As he herd's them into a cooler, he'll say, "Well, look at it this way. At least you'll get off work for the rest of the day," says Lodi Police Detective Brian Scott. He's definitely not your typical hands up, this is a robbery kind of crook. Still, during several holdups, he has fired his semi-automatic handgun into a wall to show people he means business. And once he shot a telephone to prevent employees from calling police, Van Winkle said. He also has shot out a glass door to escape. In a Sacramento robbery in February, a McDonald's employee surprised the roofman inside the restaurant, striking him on the head with a bucket. This is the one I was talking about. The youth was pistol whipped by the robber, but not seriously hurt. Nice as he may seem, we still consider the roofman to be armed and dangerous, Van Winkle said. We're not sure how much violence he is capable of. Sometimes his exploits have taken a page from a Keystone Cops episode. Dozens of times, local police have found half-drilled holes and abandoned equipment, suggesting his holdup attempts were foiled. In Folsom on Thanksgiving, he drilled into a McDonald's only to find that the restaurant was closed for the day. At other businesses, he has dropped through the wrong part of the roof, finding his path blocked by a freezer or other obstacle. Scott said police came closest to capturing the fleet-footed crook after a robbery in Placerville. After being spotted by the officers, he dashed across 4 lanes of traffic on US 50 and made his escape. Due to the widespread nature of the robberies, the California Department of Justice has assigned an agent to coordinate the investigation. Roofman has been so successful, investigators say, that he inspired a string of copycat break-ins. Based on the sheer coast-to-coast logistics, it's hard to catch up with him, Scott said. You set up surveillance in one town and he just drives down the road, or maybe to a different state entirely. That's it. So he gets sentenced to 45 years. They catch him in Charlotte, or in Belmont, and he gets sent to prison for 45 years, which is it just me, or does that sound excessive for only being convicted of 2 of them? It seems excessive to me. Anyway, so he's in the Browns Creek Correctional right here, and he bides his time. He's a model citizen. He's doing everything right. He gets a little job in the metal shop. He decides, look, I'm going to do everything I'm supposed to do in this prison, and I am just going to mind my P's and Q's. They think he's just trying to get off on good time. Turns out he did not stop his surveilling everything. He's taking notes. He's got nothing but time now. They put him away for way too long. He's not going to stay in there that long because he's like, why would you sentence me for 45 years for 2 robberies? He claims he didn't do the other ones and he was the copycat. But like I said before, all of these robberies lined up with where he's trying to say that it just happened to be that he had to go to Minnesota for training. And during that 2-week period that he was in Minnesota, there was 3 of these robberies, but it wasn't him. And then they stopped immediately after he left. Neither here nor there. He didn't get convicted of them, right? So let me go back to my notes. I was just winging it there for a minute. So he's studying the schedule. He's working in the shop, in the metal shop. They're making metal desks, I guess, and selling them. I didn't realize prisons do that, which is good, I guess, because then they make up some of the money that they could be charging the taxpayers. Like if they're making furniture in this metal shop in this prison, and I don't know who they sell it to, but maybe they sell it back to the government. Who knows? He's studying how often the guards change shifts, how many trucks come, what day of the week, and what time they come, all of these things. He ends up taking extra uniforms and sewing them himself to look like civilian clothes. He cuts off the sleeves of a shirt. He's sewed a patch over the prison number. He hemmed the pants into shorts that and made cargo pockets into them, so they looked like you would just buy them at Walmart. Like they look like the cargo shorts that everybody was wearing back then. If you still own cargo shorts, I suggest you throw them out. This is your sign that it's time to throw the cargo shorts out. Anyway. I had to hide Mr. Zed's cargo shorts until he forgot that he owned them and then threw them out. Don't tell him, please. I don't even think he knows that they're missing. So he ends up escaping under a delivery truck. So what he did is he took a piece of plywood. He measured exactly how it would fit under this truck. He spray painted it black. He installed it into this truck that came at a regular schedule. He made sure it's the same truck that comes every time, same license plate, same driver, same truck comes every week, same time. And he installed the platform, but he didn't get on it right away. He waited. He took his time. He made sure they didn't find that. And then a few weeks later, he ends up climbing up onto the platform. And in the meantime, while he was biding his time, he made 2 pieces of cardboard to cover like the front and the back, and he spray painted those black as well. So that way if somebody looks under there with a mirror, all they would see is black. They wouldn't see him at all. Then he waited for this truck to make a delivery on a rainy, overcast day, because when it's raining out, the guards don't want to be outside with their mirror looking under a truck, and it's darker, so there's not as much light reflecting up to see under there. And that's what he did. He ended up getting away from the prison. Once he was outside, he started hitchhiking. Like I said, he waited for a rainy day. He sewed clothes to look like civilian clothes. The person that picked him up on this road outside of the prison where he was hitchhiking and drove him all the way an hour down the road to where he ended up happened to be the GED teacher at the prison. I bet that guy was kicking himself afterwards. Of course, he had never met Jeffrey Manchester, because what we know about him is he's a very smart dude who had graduated from high school. He was in the military. He never had to take GED classes, but the GED teacher from the prison is the one that picked him up and drove him away from the prison. He ends up getting dropped off here, and this Triangle Shopping Center used to be a Toys R Us. You can kind of see it was half Toys R Us on this side and half Circuit City on this other side, and you can still see that front. You know how Circuit City used to have that big red, look like a plug? That was over here. So this side was the Toys R Us. So he gets dropped off near there, and decides to go in. Let's see what other articles. We'll leave that Toys R Us, that retro picture of that Toys R Us up for you guys to look at. So he goes in and he finds that there's a space behind the bike rack. The bike rack is like up against a wall, and there's like a little cubby behind there that's hollow. So he's good at drilling through walls and ceilings and stuff like that, right? So he goes inside there and he ends up just setting up in there. At night, he would ride bicycles around the store. He took remote control cars up to the roof and would entertain himself that way. He studied the surveillance system. He went into the manager's office one night and found the books for the surveillance system, like the manuals, and studied exactly how it works so he could erase the tapes before people would come in the next day, so they wouldn't catch him doing any of this stuff. They would think there's a glitch in the system. He probably learned how to work those security cameras better than any person in that store, like any employee that worked at that store. He knew how to work that surveillance system. He's put a bed in there. He took like the little toddler mattresses and put a couple of them together. He got Spider-Man sheets for them. He got a little TV with different baby monitors hooked up. He had a DVD player where he had movies he could watch in there. A whole little hidey hole. Like, you think that it's popular right now for YouTubers to have a secret hiding space? I think it all started with Jeffrey Manchester. I built a secret hiding spot in my garage. Okay. Jeffrey Manchester did it first inside of a Toys R Us. And he stayed, he ended up eating a bunch of baby food and candy in order to stay alive. And they had drinks and stuff in there too at the checkouts. So he just lived in there for weeks, and he ended up starting to get bored. So, once he had his whole thing set up with his Spider-Man sheets, with his 8 baby monitors, his PlayStation, his DVD player, he ended up venturing out during the day, and he found a church down the road that he decided to start going to. He met a woman there named Lee at a singles event at this church. I know I saw during the preview of the movie, which I'm going to see tonight, they say that she worked at the store. She didn't actually work at the store. He met her at this singles event at the Crossroads Presbyterian Church. Right now, it's renamed to the Ben Salem Presbyterian Church, but he went in there and went by a different name, John Zorin, and he just started going to church and started introducing himself as John. Went to the singles event, met a lady, they started dating. He met with her 3 kids, and he would just, every time he showed up to pick her up for a date or to go hang out, he showed up with all these great toys for her kids, and she fell in love with him. She was very impressed because during the toy drive at Christmas at the church, he donated more toys for underprivileged kids than anybody else in the whole church. And he was new to the church. He had just moved to the area. He was new to the church, and he donated all of these toys. I wonder where he got them, right? But she was very impressed by that. And then she saw him at the singles event, and they started canoodling. He told all of the other church members and her that he worked for the government, so he wasn't allowed to talk about his job. He ended up going to the dentist, getting some dental work done, like just living a normal life. But at night, he would go back to the Toys R Us just before they closed, go into his little space. He ended up boring the Circuit City ended up closing down at this time, so he bored a hole in the wall over to the Circuit City and found a spot that was a bigger square footage for his little apartment under the stairs at the Circuit City next door, which was abandoned. He piped in water and HVAC to his new spot. So he built it up like he was planning on staying there for a long time. He did plumbing work in his new apartment, which is crazy to me. Then he decided, well, what I'm going to have to do is rob the Toys R Us and then get away one last time. It's been 6 months. It's kind of slowed down a little bit. They're not looking for me as much anymore. I could actually get away now. So he stayed in there for 6 months. First thing he did was he went back to the dentist office to try and broke in the middle of the night to try to find his dental records, because he thought, well, crap, if they figure out my dental records are connected with this dentist, if they somehow put that together, they're going to know my new alias. And he had already had his identification, everything made with his new alias, so he didn't want to give that up. So he went to the dentist office to try to find out, or to find his records and just make them disappear. He couldn't find them in there, so he burnt down the entire dentist office. He just burnt it to the ground. Then, so he's planning this Toys R Us robbery for the day after Christmas because he figured that's when they're going to have the most money. Toys R Us used to go crazy like just before Christmas. So the day after Christmas on the 26th, he was going to rob the place, and he figured they're going to have all the cash in the safe from like the previous week's worth of sales. He goes and breaks into a pawn shop and stole guns in the middle of the night. He stole 4 different handguns from a local pawn shop. And his plan all along was to rob this Toys R Us on December 26, 2004. So he surprised the workers, gathered them all into one area. 2 employees snuck away and called the police. So he's politely demanding money, and he gets the money, and while fleeing, he encounters an off-duty police officer that tries to apprehend him, but he ends up punching her in the face. He tripped the alarm exiting out the back door, and like he pushed the door open as if he was going out the back door, but then turned back around and went back to his hidey hole. So they all come like trying to chase after him, thinking he went out the back door. But he didn't go out the back door. He went back to his spot and was hiding in there. So they didn't catch him right away. The police were there quicker than expected and did like a full search of the store, set up a perimeter of the surrounding area, and he still got away. So they end up like really searching because they're like, how on earth, we got there so quick, how on earth did they get away? So January 2nd, so a couple of days later, like a week later, they end up finding his little room, his little hidey hole room. And while investigating, the police, it says in my notes that the police were actually kind of impressed because he was like really set up. Like I said, he had rerouted the HVAC and water to his little spot. He had like the bed and the DVD player, the PlayStation, all of that in there. But they ended up finding his fingerprints in there, and his fingerprints were matched to Jeffrey Manchester, who had escaped from the prison about an hour away. And so they ended up peppering the surrounding area with his picture and his, the wanted poster, the whole thing. And of course, the people at the church recognized him because he had been going to that church for like 3 or 4 months at that point, religiously, pun intended, every Sunday. And then for these singles events and whatever else, the toy drive, all of the things. He was participating at this church. He was an active member of this church. So the people of the church recognize him. They're like, oh, he's dating Lee, so you should probably go talk to her. And they did end up going to talk to her, and she was like flabbergasted. I can't even imagine. You don't think, like, she was in love with him. She liked him a lot. And I can't imagine thinking like, oh, this guy that I'm in love, like the first thing you would think is not that this guy is a criminal, like hiding from something. You would just take his story at face value that, yeah, he works for the government. He can't tell me about his job. We can't go to his place because it's in a secret government building. He's got to come over here. Like, you wouldn't think that that's a lie. If she's anything like me, she probably just trusts people to begin with, which is probably not a great thing, but that's what normal people do. People that aren't around that element or don't think like a criminal just trust that everybody else is like them, Anyway, Lee ends up setting him up. She says in interviews that she was forced to set him up. I mean, I don't know if you could be forced to set him up. Anyway, it was her birthday, and she invited him over to celebrate her birthday, and the police were there waiting for him, and that's how he ends up getting caught in the end. Let's hear from her. Oh, I closed it. Why did I do that? I don't know. There we go. He looks like such a nice guy, doesn't he? Yeah, a nice guy. By the way, he does sound like he was very smart and nice and charming, but let's not forget that he traumatized people by holding them at gunpoint. He sucker punched a female police officer. He robbed a pawn shop and burned down a dentist office. So let's not lose sight of that while we're watching this.
He had a wife and kids.
This is her, by the
that I
way.
didn't know anything about. He wanted a better life for them. He wanted to provide better for them. And of course, the military didn't pay very well. So he started doing criminal things, and then it snowballed. But at the end of the day, knowing what we know now about him, how crafty and skilled, I think he enjoyed the chase. It wasn't about the money in the end. I think he enjoyed eluding the police and being sneaky and seeing what he could get away with. I think he enjoyed that. I don't think it was about the money, maybe initially, but that becomes a sickness when you just keep doing it over and over and over again. You have no intentions of hurting anybody or even yelling or screaming or hitting anyone. That wasn't the plan. I think he enjoyed doing it. I didn't ask him that, but that's my perception. I know he never shot anyone. He never beat anybody up. He never screamed or yelled or verbally abused anyone. And so I just hold on to that because I just know what a kind, sensitive, caring person he is. And I think about what he hasn't had for so long and how he was obviously craving the things, that he got from the church, acceptance and love and family and friends and a sense of community and a sense of helping. He just wanted to do good things for other people. Did he feel bad about what he did? I'm sure he did, but he tried to make up for it by being nice or by being generous. I just hold on to the good stuff.
I remember the impact being substantial, that these victims were terrified. While he may have been nice to them, it is still terrifying to have a gun pointed at.
Like, just listening to Lee, she sounded like she was really in love with him, and she's looking over the fact that she's like, oh, well, he never beat anybody up. He pistol whipped a teenage kid in a McDonald's. He sucker punched a female cop, and he burned down that dentist office. Like, all of those people that worked at that dentist office is now out of a job for who knows how long, right? He robbed that pawn shop. It's not like he didn't do anything. And I didn't even mention this. I forgot to mention this. When they found his hideout, he had $6,000 worth of merchandise, like new unopened toys from the Toys R Us in there. Not to mention the fact, all the stuff that he stole from there, either to eat, to consume, or to give away. They said that he gave away more at that Christmas toy drive that year at the church than anybody else. So I don't even know how much stuff. I don't even know they could track how much stuff he ended up stealing from that Toys R Us. And to give to her kids.
The good stuff.
I remember the impact being substantial, that these victims were terrified. While he may have been nice to them, it is still terrifying to have a gun pointed at you, ordered to get into a freezer when you have no idea how long you're going to be in that freezer. I know that Hollywood will make a movie out of any life experience, but I just hope the takeaway for people watching the movie is understanding that the victims in real life actually experienced a very horrifying event.
I wanted to be strong because I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything I could that he wouldn't hurt us.
Yeah. And for you, did that mean just doing whatever he said?
Yeah, I mean, and he really didn't ask that much from me. It's just, find the safe, open the safe, give me money, and I did everything. And then when he put us in the cooler, he said, don't come out. We did that. We did everything, and it turned out good. it turned out good. But I guess if I'd have known that I had heard of the rooftop bandit or whatever before, but I don't think at the time that I was going through this, I really actually thought this was what this was. I guess I was probably more bitter than I really wanted to be, but I really couldn't help it because I was just mad that he did that. I was just mad that he did that to all of us. I was just mad that he had done it not one time or two times, but he'd done crazy things before, and I was just mad.
And that's what I think a lot of people miss is the victimization of what he did to people is just so broad. You've got a dentist, you've got his staff, we're all out of jobs. And the dentist is being accused of doing it for insurance money, and it's not him. You've got all these young people that I always describe it as your teenager's first day of work at McDonald's, and they got their uniforms perfect and they're feeling good and they're early, and then they get held at gunpoint and stuck in a freezer. That's pretty much the trauma that's going to stick with you the rest of your life.
The person who did that 25 years ago is not the same person that I'm talking to now. You know, he would like to get out and try to live a normal life. His mother died 2 weeks ago while he was there, and obviously he couldn't go to the funeral. I mean, I like to think I can spot realness.
I think it's interesting that the pastor from the church that he was attending is still in contact with him all these years later. So he didn't give up on him, you know, which is amazing.
Spot realness. I err on the side of grace instead of legalism and pounding somebody over the head.
We didn't know anything about the guy. We didn't know that he was former military. We didn't know that he was, I think, airborne division. I think that only came out years after the fact. But one thing, whenever I was looking through the area, my manager pointed out, he picked up a little journal that Manchester had been keeping, and it was a daily exercise journal. And he was recording everything that he was doing to keep in shape, to keep fit while he was working there. And I remember my manager saying, he's like, I am glad I did not run into this guy. Been put back into a wall, I think he would have come out swinging. So fortunately, nobody that I knew was injured by any of his things.
So that's it. That's the story of Roofman. What did you guys think? I know it's a short one, but like I said, I'm going to see the movie tonight. It's date night with Mr. Zed. We're going out for dinner and a movie, and I wanted to cover it again before I was influenced by Hollywood version of it. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Like I said, I will go live when I have something to say. Otherwise, you'll see me Wednesdays and Fridays with KFAR. And I guess that's it. I'm trying to think if I have time. Nah, I don't. I don't have time. I got to go get ready for date night. I was going to say if anybody has anything to say. Well, I have another article I could read, I guess. Let's see. Now, it's basically saying the same thing that the other article said. Oh, this one has how he got captured. So I'll read that part of it. Okay. I'll do that and then we'll be done. Okay, The Great Escape and Living in Toyland. Inside Brown Creek, Manchester proved once again that patience and a knack for improvisation were his greatest tools. Assigned to the metal shop, he studied the comings and goings of delivery trucks for months on end. And he noted shift changes, gate checks, and which drivers rarely bothered to look under their rigs. He fashioned a simple but ingenious escape aid, a plywood platform, cut to fit snugly along the truck's undercarriage, then painted pitch black. He also used scraps of cardboard to disguise himself further. On June 15th, 2004, he executed the plan, tucked himself beneath the moving lorry. Apparently, a British person wrote this article. A truck is what he meant to say. He crept past the guards at the exit gate, holding his breath as they gave the departing vehicle no more than a passing glance. Back on the outside, Manchester hitchhiked to Charlotte, North Carolina. This time, rather than slip through roofs, he turned into what could only be called a suburban squatting. He broke into a Toys R Us, chose a forgotten corner, and transformed it into a secret flat. For food, he raided the baby aisle. Jars of pureed carrots, formula milk, boxes of animal crackers kept him going. When night fell, Roofman came alive, riding display bicycles up and down the aisles for exercise, testing remote control toys, and sometimes rearranging stock to amuse himself. During store hours, he laid silent in his loft, listening to the hum of customers and staff. At Christmas, he drew near, and the toy store bustled with families. As Christmas drew near, the toy store bustled with families. Manchester prudently shifted his nest to the abandoned Circuit City next door. There, he hollowed out a nook under a stairwell, painted it bright, hung movie posters, and watched DVDs to pass the time. Among them was fittingly Catch Me If You Can. Far from just hiding, he was preparing. He fitted baby monitors around the Toys R Us for surveillance, manipulated rotas to pave the way for his biggest heist yet. All while he wove himself into the local life. He joined the Crossroads Presbyterian Church, began to date Lee Wainscott, and spun elaborate lies He spun elaborate lies about being a covert government operative needing secure accommodation. For a few surreal months, Roofman lived both as a fugitive in a crawl space and as a friendly boyfriend handing out toys to his girlfriend's children. By late 2004, Manchester had woven a precious web of half-truths and bold trespasses, living rent-free inside a shuttered electronics store and masquerading as a government agent to his girlfriend and church friends. As he was running on borrowed time, the Toys R Us plan grew more elaborate by the week, but his method of preparing for it showed that despite his polite veneer, Roofman was capable of darker turns. Manchester knew that to pull off his grand finale, he would need a firearm. He also worried that local dentist office where he had had some dental work done might give him away. So in a move that startled even seasoned detectives later, he reportedly set fire to the practice, reducing any potential records to ash. Not content with arson alone, he robbed a local pawn shop to secure a new weapon. 4, actually. All while slipping back each night to his secret bunk beneath the Circuit City staircase. On December 26, 2004, while most families were dozing off Christmas dinner and hunting Boxing Day bargains, Manchester made his move. He slipped into the back of the Toys R Us before opening, armed and ready. Using his surveillance knowledge, he isolated employees and locked them down and helped himself to a substantial haul of cash from the store's safe and tills. True to form, he spoke gently and tried to reassure his captives. But this time, 2 staff managed to slip free and dashed outside to alert law enforcement. When officers arrived, Manchester was already gone. However, the net closed quickly. In the frantic search that followed, police scoured the abandoned Circuit City and discovered his hidden lair. Mattress, snacks, stashed DVDs, even that fateful copy of Catch Me If You Can, which ironically bore the only identifiable fingerprint. It was the sort of discovery that made hardened detectives laugh in disbelief. A criminal so brazen, he lived on the high street right under the city's nose. Despite the chaos, Manchester did not bolt from Charlotte. Instead, he tried to resume his life as John Zorn, the affectionate churchgoer with the secret government job. But the pressure was on. Lee Wainscott, the unwilling girlfriend, was immense. She had grown suspicious, and while police laid out the evidence, she agreed to help end the farce. On January 5th, 2005, at the police's request, Wainscott rang Manchester and invited him over. He arrived unsuspecting and likely hoping to calm her nerves with another tall tale. Instead, he walked into the arms of waiting officers, bringing an end, once again, to his unusual brand of polite lawbreaking. In December that year, a North Carolina court tried Manchester for the fresh offenses, burglary, weapons charges, arson, escape, and more. He received a further 40 years on top of the original sentence, sealing his fate for decades to come. After his recapture, Manchester was first held at Marion Correctional Institute before being transferred to Central Prison in Raleigh, a high-security facility less likely to overlook a man so skilled at slipping through the cracks. Even so, Roofman never fully gave up on the outwitting the system. He attempted new escapes both in 2009 and 2017, reminding authorities that the patient, quiet, smiling fugitive could never quite be written off. As it stands, Jeffrey Manchester is expected to remain behind bars until December 2036. Whether the Roofman is finally at peace with a life less adventurous is anyone's guess. But you can be sure the wardens check the ceilings a little more often than they used to. Man, I've been reading, so I have not been reading the chat. I can only read one thing at a time, guys. So that's it. What do you think? He's like up to 85 years. Of course, his sentence began in 2004, I think. But 85 years for it's a bunch of little crimes, right? But don't they normally have people serve those concurrently? Basically a life sentence. And all he was convicted for, well, at first was two armed robberies of those McDonald's. And then, of course, the new charges, which include the breaking and entering of the Toys R Us, the arson of the dentist office, the stealing the firearms from the pawn shop, all those new things. I think it's too much. And I also think that he should not be out yet. Right? And he did try to escape 2 more times. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to go see the movie. I'll tell you how it lines up with the real story. Like I said, we're going tonight at 6:15 is our reservation at the cinema. So I will pop on, or I'll do a post or something, or I'll maybe let you guys know at the beginning of the show Wednesday if it was, it says, based on a true story. But a lot of times when it's based on a true story, it's like, we got the idea from a true story and it really doesn't have anything to do with it. But I have to say, Jeffrey Manchester should be pretty happy that Channing Tatum is playing him in a movie, right? I'm happy that Channing Tatum is playing him in a movie because I'm going to go see it. So that's it. That's the show. I hope you all enjoyed it. And I will see you Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for an episode of Booze and Body Cams with my co-host, Kafar. Have a good weekend, guys. Bye.
First Florida man was Hernando de Soto. First Florida man, Hernando de Soto. First Florida man was Hernando de Soto. Won't you so loco? Show off your photos, throw out your Twinkies, throw up your ho-hos, tuck in them pinkies. Them shits a no-no. The first Florida man was Hernando de Soto. Brought to my attention by the man with the mojo. My 8th subscriber, I'm up at Goso. Jump in them Sinkies and dump them mimosos. The first Florida man was Hernando de Soto. so dope. First Florida man was Hernando de Soto.